Welcome back to another video of Rome history. Don't forget to subscribe.
The political structure and legal reforms of the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic, 509–27 BCE, replaced the monarchy of ancient Rome with a new political system grounded in a delicate balance of powers. Its constitution rested on three main pillars that checked and supported one another: the magistrates, elected officials who exercised executive authority; the Senate, a council of elders who guided policy; and the popular assemblies, bodies of citizens who voted on laws and elections. The unity of these elements was embodied in the famous motto Senatus Populus Romanus, SPQR, meaning the Senate and people of Rome. After the expulsion of the last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, in 509 BCE, Rome's aristocracy established a republican government in which no single person could hold absolute power. With the monarchy abolished, supreme authority, imperium, was entrusted to two chief magistrates called consuls. Consuls were elected annually and collegially. Each consul could veto the other's decisions, and their one-year term prevented any long-term autocracy. These measures ensured that power was temporary and accountable. Consuls commanded the army, convened the assemblies, and executed the laws, essentially replacing the king's role with a dual executive. Additionally, if a consul acted outside the law, citizens could appeal the decision to the popular assemblies. Over time, the consuls' broad powers were distributed among new magistracies in a hierarchy: cursus honorum, quaestors, aediles, praetors, consuls, and censors, each office with specific functions and limits. In extreme emergencies, the Republic could appoint a dictator, a single magistrate with extraordinary powers, but only for a strict 6-month term. This early framework ensured that no single official could easily dominate the state. The Senate of the Roman Republic, which had existed in an advisory role during the monarchy, grew into a central governing body comprised mainly of patricians, the aristocratic class. Senators were typically former magistrates and held their position for life. The Senate did not pass laws; that power belonged to the assemblies, but it controlled state finances, oversaw foreign policy and diplomacy, and advised magistrates on military and civil matters. In practice, the Senate's decrees, senatus consulta, carried great authority. The Senate ratified decisions of the assemblies and could issue emergency directives in times of crisis. Thus, although the Republic was not a monarchy, it was not a pure democracy either. The patrician elite maintained considerable influence through the Senate and the higher magistracies. In the early Republic, political power was monopolized by patrician families, while the common people, or plebeians, had little direct say in governance. This imbalance set the stage for social conflict. The patricians were Rome's hereditary aristocracy, claiming descent from the city's founders. They alone could initially hold high offices and priesthoods. The plebeians, on the other hand, comprised the majority of the population, from peasants and craftsmen to traders and some wealthy families, but they were largely excluded from political power and subject to the laws and judgments of patrician magistrates. Early in the Republic, plebeians faced heavy debts, the threat of debt slavery, and lack of legal protection against arbitrary rule. Discontent grew as plebeians questioned why they should bear the burdens of military service and taxation without equal rights or representation in government. This long-standing social resentment led to what historians call the conflict of the orders, a prolonged struggle between the plebeians and patricians for political equality. Tensions climaxed around 494 BCE, barely 15 years into the Republic, when plebeians took revolutionary action by withdrawing en masse from the city, an event known as the First Secession of the Plebs. According to tradition, Rome was threatened by external enemies at that moment, and the army could not function without the plebeian soldiers. The plebeian protesters camped on the Aventine Hill, or in some accounts the Sacred Mount, and refused to return to Rome until their grievances were addressed. Facing the crisis of a paralyzed army and a city split apart, the patrician leaders were compelled to negotiate. A veteran statesman, Agrippa Menenius Lenatus, famously appeased the crowd by recounting a fable of the body's limbs rebelling against the stomach, illustrating that patricians and plebeians needed each other for Rome to survive. The immediate outcome of this confrontation was a remarkable political concession: the creation of an entirely new office to represent the plebeians. the tribune of the plebs, and a new popular assembly, the concilium plebis, council of the plebeians. The establishment of the tribunes of the plebs was a milestone in Roman constitutional history. Initially 2 in number, eventually raised to 10, tribunes were officials elected by plebeians, for plebeians in their own assembly. Uniquely, tribunes were independent of the patrician magistrates and were imbued with the power to defend plebeians against injustice. They possessed the right of jus auxili, the right to assist or rescue any plebeian from the clutches of a magistrate's coercion. To enable them to carry out this role, tribunes were endowed with the principle of sacrosanctity, sacrosanctitas, meaning their persons were legally inviolate. Harm to a tribune was sacrilege. Anyone who attacked or interfered with a tribune could be put to death with impunity. This sacred status was affirmed by an oath taken by plebeians to defend their tribunes. Armed with sacrosanct status, the tribunes wielded formidable powers collectively termed the tribunician power, potestas tribunicia. They could veto intercessio almost any act of the Roman government, the decisions of consuls and other magistrates, the decrees of the Senate, and even the laws proposed by the assemblies, if those actions threatened the rights of the plebeians. A tribune's veto could halt official proceedings, effectively giving the plebeian order a voice to counter the patrician officials. Moreover, tribunes could convene the plebeian council and propose legislation, known as plebiscites, to that body. They also had the power to punish magistrates who violated the rights of plebeians, even to the extent of imposing fines or arrest, authorities encapsulated in their coercitio, coercive power. Through these means, the tribunes became the principal guardians of plebeian interests. Their emergence marks the first major check on patrician dominance and represents an early form of institutionalized civil rights protection within Roman law. Another fundamental plebeian demand was the creation of a written code of laws. In the early Republic, Rome's laws were based on custom and interpreted by patrician judges according to aristocratic tradition, mos maiorum. This lack of transparency meant that plebeians often fell victim to arbitrary judgments, since only the patricians fully knew the legal norms. Beginning around the mid-5th century BCE, plebeian pressure led the Republic to undertake a comprehensive publication of laws. In 451 BCE, the Romans formed a special 10-member commission, the Decemviri Legibus Scribundus, which was granted extraordinary authority to draft a law code. During this period, regular magistracies, including the consulate, were suspended, and the decemvirs governed Rome collegially while compiling the laws. The first Decemviral Commission produced 10 tables of laws, which were displayed for public comment. In 450 BCE, a second decemvirate added 2 additional tables, completing the set that became known as the 12 Tables. These laws were then ratified and, according to tradition, inscribed on bronze tablets. The 12 tables were displayed in the Roman Forum for all to read. This was a momentous change. For the first time, Rome's laws were visible and fixed, not subject to the whims of individual magistrates. The content of the 12 tables covered civil procedures, debt, property rights, family law, inheritance, and crimes, establishing rules and penalties that applied to both patricians and plebeians. Many of the 12 tables statutes may seem harsh by modern standards, yet they ensured basic legal protections and are regarded as the foundation of Roman law. By codifying customary law, the 12 tables bolstered the principle of the rule of law in the Republic and gave plebeians a measure of equality in the courts. The publication of the 12 tables did not end the conflict of the orders. Rather, it emboldened plebeians to push for further reforms. In the decades that followed, additional laws incrementally chipped away at patrician privilege and expanded plebeian rights. One crucial reform was the recognition of plebiscites, decisions passed by the plebeian council, as binding for all citizens, not just plebeians. Over time, plebeians also gained access to the highest political and religious offices, including the consulship and the priesthoods. The culmination of these reforms came in 287 BCE, with the Lex Hortensia, which definitively established that plebiscites had the force of law without requiring Senate approval. This marked the legal equality of plebeians and patricians in the Republic. By the early 3rd century BCE, the Roman Republic had undergone a profound transformation. The political system, once dominated by a hereditary aristocracy, had evolved into a more inclusive structure where power was shared among Rome's free male citizens. at least in theory. While significant disparities remained, especially in wealth and influence, the foundational legal and institutional reforms of the early republic laid the groundwork for Rome's later expansion and enduring legacy.